What are the biggest compliance challenges you think small and medium business organizations face? I guess we have here two different scenarios. First is a small company being part of a bigger group, and the second would be this one small independent company. Let's discuss first the first scenario. Important to implement compliance here and keep it efficient to have everybody on board, speaking about the local people, but also being in a discussion with your headquarter colleagues that they understand that some of the global regulations may have to be adapted for small companies, as various topics are difficult to implement, especially in the approval streams, as you not only want to have 4I principles, but if you're speaking about relevant compliance topics, sometimes even 3 or 4 or even more approvers may be required, which makes it a bit challenging for the smaller companies. And so important, underline the importance of compliance in the small entity, and also underline the same with the headquarter colleagues, because compliance controls have to be as efficient as possible, but also as non-bureaucratic as possible to not demotivate the people, and due to demotivation may trigger that they start looking for the loopholes. So the problems that both scenarios face, the small group entity and the small or medium independent company, is missing budget, so you have to do more with less, and even especially with digital transformation, we see possibilities if you have the right people on board, especially in the IT department. So there are some things you can do even for free. For example, you can implement public tools, public domain tools. You can implement, for example, an internal compliance, Wikipedia, implement even a chatbot with free software. You can program Google alerts for your high-risk vendors. So there are some things you can do even with in a small and medium entity if you have the right people supporting you as a compliance officer. Again, especially you always should have a good connection with your IT department. I like to do the comparison with the James Bond movies. You remember James Bond in all of the movies, I think. In the beginning he visits Q and his department to check out the latest gadgets which he can use to solve the actual problems. So, as I said, missing budget, you have to do more with less. Workload, often we're speaking here about a quite stretched situation, so employees not only have one responsibility, as you often see in headquarters of a bigger global company, but people wear different hats. So we have a compliance officer also maybe responsible for HR, health and safety, internal audit, export control, etc. And so most people are wearing different hats, meaning they're not dedicated 100% of their time for just one topic. So again, processes have to be as effective as possible and as non-bureaucratic as possible. If we are speaking about a small or medium company in a low-risk country, like for example Canada, US, and big parts of Europe, you may face the problem that they underestimate the compliance risk because most employees are not traveling for business in these higher risk areas, so they may not see all the risks as you as a compliance officer are identifying. So really, especially when we speak about GRC, you're responsible for the risks for compliance and maybe also the other risks in the company. You really have to explain them, use maybe storytelling techniques. People have to understand that even if they are in a smaller organization in a low-risk country, we are living in complicated times, in a complicated world, and each of us can get into trouble And this may even include that we may have protect the people against themselves. Just think about the ethical blindness phenomenon, where even good people, depending on the circumstances, do bad decisions. So please explain compliance risks and also explain why they are relevant so that people do not underestimate these risks. Considering that governance, risk and compliance are internally connected, how do technology solutions impact them? Okay, let's break it down to the three parts. First, risk assessment, because risk is normally where you should start. If you have a new company, of course, you will analyze first risk and opportunities. Relevant here is that a risk assessment is not a one-time exercise and not even an exercise maybe you do each quarter, but should be a continuous approach, meaning the moment a risk or opportunity is changing, you should change this the moment and not wait until the next quarter. When we are speaking about risks, we have different sources. First is data, and data normally comes from databases, from different indices. So especially when we speak, for example, about the risk of natural hazards, I can ask the local people living there, but they may be biased, underestimating, overestimating the risk. They may just newly moved in this area. So I may prefer not to just rely on what my local colleagues tell me, but use some indices as a natural hazard index to see what risk really we have in this area for snow, earthquakes, hurricanes, whatever. So here I use data coming from different institutes which are offered to me via a database. So here with this connection, in basic case just my internet connection, we have here the relation to technology. Of course, I may also use more sophisticated risk solutions. If I need special risks, let's speak about anti-corruption, safety, I may also choose, depending on the overall risk I have as a company, so I may choose to go to such a provider that I can use their database, of course, which has a special kind of price from my side. So again, depending on the overall risk, I may choose a basic approach or choose a more sophisticated approach. But in all cases, I use data coming from different institutes, and I discuss, for example, the data from this I got from this institute, let's say related earthquake. I discuss this with the local people. They may confirm, or they may say that they have a different perception, but nevertheless with them I also discuss what would be the impact of this earthquake. Here I also can use data and of course the expert opinion by the people living there. So I align AI with the human experience, the human intelligence. Governance. Governance means for me that we have relevant regulations in place and that people are following these regulations, meaning having the regulations in place means they must be published so that everybody has access. Normally organizations do this via their intranet. This can be aligned with automated or not automated communication of such guidelines, changes to guidelines, invitations to training, etc. So I think this makes it clear why technology is a benefit. On the other hand, again, we need the human factor because, as I've mentioned earlier on, to have an efficient processes is not only relevant that people are following this guideline, for example, but that the owner is aware of their responsibility for the regulation and really creates an efficient regulation which is as non-bureaucratic as possible. This also as a sign of respect from the company to the employee, because we are speaking about the employee's time. Also, we not want to have micromanagement because we are all adults, I hope. So really, if you're responsible for governance, risk and compliance, you have to have this contact also with the owners of the regulations, make them aware also of topics regarding human behavior, that over regulation, micromanagement, etc. may trigger employees to look for the loopholes, or they will violate the regulations at all. And this is of course against what we want to reach. And also it must be underlined that ownership means that if we detect that employees really are deviating the regulation, that there must be consequences. This could be by the owner, him, her or theirself, or if not, it must be, for example, escalated up to the CEO or CFO. Then we come to compliance, and here I would like to add that of course information is relevant. So we do the training, we tell the people these are the laws, FCPA, UKBA, etc. But important information should lead to empathy. So we must show the relation between corruption and the negative impact on society, showing that corruption is not a faceless crime, but that a lot of people are suffering, societies are not developing as they could, so up to, in extreme cases, people are dying of corruption. This is what we really have to explain the people, so that they not only comply because these are the rules, but they understand why these rules are existing, because of the social impact on society, on our connected world, but also of course at the end there's a business impact. I mean, without compliance with regulation there cannot be any kind of ESG or sustainable approach. Important, if I'm using technology, all of these tools shall be interconnected, giving a benefit not only for the GRC function, but also, for example, health and safety, HR, IDT management, so that we produce really output which is not only relevant for these single functions, which could be GRC, compliance, ESG, but for the whole company. And if everybody is benefiting, it's much easier to get the budget to implement and maintain such tools. What is the best time for the compliance team to shift to the GRC platform from traditional tools like spreadsheets? Who should initiate this transition and how? I mean, an easy answer for me would be here to mention that you are responsible for the risk assessment, meaning you know today's risk, you know the risk of tomorrow as you do your predictions, you see probability, you see impact. On the other hand, you know the available budget. Based on this, you should be able to understand what technology you need today, tomorrow, to mitigate the risks, meaning management is responsible to decide the risk appetite, so understand which grade of risks are acceptable, which not. And if you know this, then you can take the decision what tool I need, what processes I need, what headcount I need, and of course this conclusion is different for each organization. So important, a compliance officer, a GRC officer, ESG responsible, however the function is called, must know the risks, of course, must know the business, and must have expert inside the team, or maybe not an expert, a semi-expert, knowing about technical possibilities, knowing what tools are around, which could I buy, which could I implement myself, maybe with the intern from the IT department. So different options are available. You know the risks, you know the time when to implement this. How you implement it? Implementation needs a certain change management, so you want to have an experienced implementation manager, project manager to implement new processes, new tools. If you do not have this inside the compliance team, maybe you can get one from project management to help with the tasks. So you want to have adequate change management, meaning explaining to people why we change. If it's this can be an overall change in corporate culture, or just a change in processes, explaining why the change is needed, why it is a benefit not only for the compliance functions, not only for the company at all, but why is it a benefit for the people involved in the process themselves. If they understand it, they are on your side, and so you shift from a push strategy to a pull strategy, and this should make life easier for you. VComply's fourth question: what things must every compliance team automate, and what should they never automate? Coming back to what I've mentioned right in the beginning, GRC should start with an efficient risk assessment. So we have to understand our environment, we have to understand the organization, understand where we're coming from, but also the strategy where we want to go to. Based on the risks, on the data here, must be our decisions. This includes also what I can automate and what not. So just some example which may apply for you or may not apply to you. Something you may want to automate, at least partly independent if you have a higher or lower budget, is your knowledge. Especially after COVID, for example, here in the US, we saw a higher number of employees leaving the different companies for the various reasons, sometimes without long advice before. So you want to ensure that knowledge stays inside the organization, which includes, of course, also the knowledge regarding anti-money laundering, antitrust, or anti-corruption. And it's not that difficult. For example, PowerPoint. Most of us, we have our different trainings in PowerPoint format, so we can use the options which the tool gives us. For example, we can include audio, so we can narrate our PowerPoint slides. We can even include video, so what you see right at the moment I can include also directly in the PowerPoint. So due to this, we can have an efficient training, even completely online, which has the advantage that you have 24 hours access to the knowledge. For example, if you can stream the PowerPoints directly from SharePoint. So this is something which you want to automate, and this you can automate on different levels. You can just upload the PowerPoint on your server, or you can integrate it on a learning platform. If you have the possibility, of course, you want to automate a system to red flag your payments, especially your high-risk payments, and here human and together work together inside the human AI team, as I often like to compare it with the relation between a dog and its owner, where the dog represents the AI. The dog is the beta in the team, so the dog alarms me, for example, if somebody is before the house, the person coming from Amazon putting some strange package in the entrance, then the dog alerts me. I consider this advice coming from the dog, look at the door and see this is a package, maybe I want to open the door, maybe I want to carry it in, or I may just ignore it. So I get the red flag coming from the AI, so to speak, and as a human, I stay still responsible, meaning I stay the alpha, and I decide what to do based on the alert. Of course, another important thing, continuous monitoring of high-risk vendors, especially intermediates such as a sales agent or consultant. And here also we have to consider the decisions here in the US by the SIC, meaning these guys, Department of Justice, SEC, they know the tools which are on the market, and based on my individual organization, it is expected that I use given existing technology to minimize my compliance risk. Of course, this applies mostly for companies which are in a high-risk environment, such as, for example, healthcare, the finance sector. So they are really expected to have all the nice IT tools, which include also continuous monitoring. But also, based on your risk assessment, again, you may consider implementing this. This is really a recommendation. So these are things which you should implement, which you should automate. Knowledge, red flagging, monitoring, and you may also consider having an internal wiki. You may consider having a chatbot, so where employees can come to compliance 24 hours, they not lose their face if they make a stupid question, and so on, but also depending on the organization, also depending on the culture. Things you not want to implement. Compliance is less about regulations, less about tools, guidelines, less about laws. If it would be, then we don't need a compliance department, a compliance officer, because we can print out the FCPA, give it to each of the employee, and that's it. The problem is, even if employees know what is expected, they may be motivated or tempted, depending the situation. And here you may only think about Donald Cressy's famous fraud triangle to find the loophole or openly deviate to regulations, and not only because, not only in most of the cases, not because they are bad people, but depending the situation, also good people can do bad action, which was also concluded like this, for example, by W. Edward Deming, who also said a bad system always beats a good employee. So compliance, or GRC, ethics and compliance, it's about the human, the employee, but of course also including considering the customer, the provider, the partner, or just our neighbors. And due to this, compliance officers should have somehow knowledge about behavioral science. Would be great if they have some kind of background also in psychology, because we have not only to teach the people what to do, but also we have to motivate the people that they really want to do, and we have to prepare them that they're able to do what they want to do. Speaking about ethical blindness, for example, means at the end sometimes we have to prevent that they do something bad just against their better knowledge, meaning we have to protect them against themselves, because we know the different risk scenarios, and we know which employees are prepared for these scenarios, which maybe not, and due to this we have to train the people. This could be in-person workshops. Again, we can use automation, we can implement some compliance games, for example, basic compliance adventure games, which you can create, for example, again with PowerPoint. You can, and I'm looking a little bit into the future, we can use the metaverse, having implement some compliance scenarios in a virtual reality and see how the employees solve this scenario. So there are a lot of fascinating stuff around already today, and there will be more tomorrow. So, interesting question. VComply's fifth question, please stay with me. Considering technological advancements, how can an organization build a culture of compliance? Culture is about the human, so the human must be in focus, So compliance must focus on the human employee and support this employee to find their place inside the overall system, especially if we not just focus on compliance, but we are responsible for governance, risk and compliance. So here I like the work of W. Edward Deming, and especially his system of profound knowledge, which defines an organization as a system, not a closed system, but also connecting to the environment, connecting to the customer, to the vendor, partners, and of course also to the neighbors, etc. I like to add on this system. The present day connects, of course, to the past. So in compliance, I want to connect, for example, to the vision of the founder who maybe started the company around 100 or more years ago. What was this person thinking? Because most probably there's a fascinating story which I can use, for example, for my communication training. And in most cases, a founder not only starts a business to ensure an income of money, but has a vision to change the world, or at least change a part of it, a market, etc. And also I want to connect with the future. What is my prediction of the future? And due to this, I have a potential way how to come to this situation. This requires system thinking of my employees, and as part of W. Edwards' system, his theory of the system of profound knowledge includes the appreciation of a system. So employees must be able of system thinking, and they may appreciate that a company is a system interacting with the whole environment, and this includes also the interaction with technology, the implementation of technology, not seeing technology as the enemy pushing me out of my comfort zone, but having a positive approach, demanding the usage of more technology so that we can conduct better our daily tasks and have a better position inside the competition. As I've spoke early on, compliance, here we can find a new purpose, not only including technology for ourselves, tools, but also support the employees to not fall to the different pitfalls when working together with technology. For example, we have different effects. We have the authority bias, where we may think that the AI was implemented by the highest levels inside the company. So the AI practically is on a higher level than myself inside the system. So I have to blindly follow what the algorithm is telling me. Or another bias is that we think that the AI is automatically knows everything better, because I mean, if we follow the media, we see a series of defeats. We see AI winning in chess, winning in Go, winning in practically all classic Atari games, winning in Quake 3 and all other multiplayer games. So we see slowly everywhere we start to lose against the AI, and here we may feel a little bit helpless, and also we think that always the AI knows better. This is not the way. Many times the AI suggests something which is obviously wrong if you would think of it. So one new purpose for compliance can be that we foster critical thinking inside the employees, so that they consider what an algorithm is telling me, but they continue thinking themselves to confirm or disconfirm, which is also, for example, important when we think about cognitive cyber attacks, where most of the attack is not against the IT system, but against the employee, to manipulate them with some kind of story why they have to change bank information, giving us access to the virtual company network, whatever. And only if we can compliance, if we can change with the times, then we stay relevant. And of course, as we want to keep our job, this is what we want to do.